Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful planet. This is Rebecca Jerningan coming to you live from the heart of America to around the globe via the World Wide Web. We're journeying into the realms of the known and the unknown. So you're listening and watching Journeys with Rebecca from Project Camelot TV Network. Welcome, everyone. I have a really fabulous guest today. As a matter of fact, she was on Project Camelot just a few weeks ago, and she's back here with some further updated information. I'm just excited to welcome Karen Tate with us. She's the author and goddess spirituality leader, and she was selected to speak and moderate a panel for the prestigious Council of the Parliament of World Religions this October. Matter of fact, she just come back from there in Salt Lake City, Utah. Now, with the rise of awareness of the sacred feminine growing across the globe today, as an alternative or counterbalance to our patriarchal culture, it's crucial and vital voices such as Tate's, as Karen's, have a place in this remarkable trend-setting interfaith conference. We're really happy to have her. She speaks on topics of women's empowerment, social justice, sacred feminine liberation, to improve the quality of life for women and men across the globe. I think you guys are going to find her really refreshing. If you missed the original interview with Karen Tate, it can be found right at Project Camelot TV Network. Carrie Cassidy had her on, and we had kind of a real fun time with that, trying to figure out. We thought maybe the time was wrong. We both had set her up for interviews. Carrie and I did unknowingly, and so she opted for both times because of this council that she had just come back from and wanted to share some of the most fabulous information. So we welcome Karen to the show. Hi, Karen. Nice to have you here, hon.
Hi, Rebecca. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's just great to have you here. You know, I know that this has really become more of your life's work. It's a passion. It's you and your husband share, and he's very involved with this as well with it and with you. So why don't we start with a little bit about, I guess, the reason why you wrote your book, when you've written many, but this last one, The Goddess Calling. Talk a little bit about that and then move into the council that you were just at in Utah, because that's going to be kind of the update for the viewers. And obviously, if anybody has questions, we would ask them to put them in the chat box in all capital letters. Those will be brought over to us, and we can get Karen to answer those right on the air today. If you didn't get your questions answered when you were viewing when she was being interviewed by Carrie, it's also a good time for you maybe to bring up some of those questions so that Karen can have the opportunity to answer those for you. So go ahead, Karen.
Well, Goddess Calling was my third book, and I believe it's a reflection of where I'm at personally, I guess you could say. You know, as I look back over the books I've done, they're sort of a reflection of where I'm at, you know, I guess in my life, you know, as my outlooks change, as I evolve as a person. I mean, my first book was about sacred places of Goddess because that's what I was doing. I was traveling to sacred places of Goddess around the world and sort of came back and reported on that, so to speak. And then the second book, you know, Walking an Ancient Path, was about incorporating Goddess spirituality into my life, into my community's life. And, you know, now Goddess Calling is a little bit more political in tone. It speaks about how embracing the values of the sacred feminine would create a new normal in society, because, you know, in our patriarchal culture, it's one of domination and oppression, quite frankly. It's what one of my mentors, Rianne Eisler, calls the dominator pyramid, and it's the few at the top of the pyramid, you know, in that little point. That's like the 1%, so to speak, the ones that own everything, the ones that are calling the shots. And the rest of us are down at the bottom of the pyramid, sort of fighting for the crumbs and, the scraps that are left, when the, 1% is accumulating all the wealth in the world. But it's not just about money, it's about oppression, it's about exploitation, it's classism, it's racism, it's sexism, it's homophobia, it's all of these isms that plague our society. And it's, exploitation, whether you're a woman and you're making 70 or 80 cents on the dollar, or you're an employee and you get no benefits, but you're working harder and making less money. The sacred feminine really, as much as it's about spirituality, it's also about politics, because politics is morality, after all. It's how we treat one another. So Goddess Calling is really about how do ideals of the sacred feminine help us to become better people. How does it, uplift society? And that's what I'm into right now. My spirituality has evolved to social justice activism, and that was very much the tone of the Parliament of World Religions that I was just at in Salt Lake City this past weekend.
Well, let me just say a couple of things. First of all, I love the way that you started this out with talking about each book and how you evolved from one point to another. To me, it feels like a natural evolution as you grew in your wisdom and your understanding and the bigger picture of the whole world and life itself. What is the meaning of that? It's reflected in the books that you've written. So, kudos to that. The second thing that I would like to address with you, or to say to you, is I was recently ran across some articles on I guess you would call it the political hierarchy of different cultures, because these are not actual countries, but where women are the ones that are in positions of power. They're the authority. There's very few of them, but there's still some around. Some of them are tribal, some of them are cultural. But in every case, what they found when women were placed in these positions of power is in these ones that we're talking about. There was no war, there was no famine, there was no negativity. Everybody worked together, and truly everybody worked as a community. It was a gathering of people together in an equal position, because everybody relied on everybody else, and yet everybody individually was strong in their own right and recognized in that. I mean, that I think speaks to what hopefully we can assist this world from patriarchy to something in the middle where it's even, where more women need to take roles. When I first started my show, I was one of the first women doing a radio show on the internet. So I had a lot of hard knocks to get through some doors. So yeah, it still exists, unfortunately, in this day. The other thing that I think is lovely to think about is that some of the big name movie actors are coming out and saying women are not being paid the same as the men are, yet they have a good box office draw because it's about money, as you say, and it's political as well. And so that is really starting to loom. All of this is coming forward, so I think we're all right on the right track here. So I commend you for, coming forward and doing this, but I'm really interested to hear, what was the council that you attended over the weekend? How is that? I'm sure you're still kind of digesting a lot of the information. So maybe you'd just like to share the experience and maybe what you presented and what other people were presenting and kind of the outcome of that.
Sure, and to piggyback on what you were saying before, I don't want to sound like a Pollyanna, because sacred feminine ideals, isn't really about women taking over the world, and because some men hear this and they get the wrong idea. They think women want to take over the world, and some of them naturally go to the next next thought, I think, and they think, okay, so women want to oppress or subjugate men like patriarchy has done women. It's not about that at all. We're after partnership. We're after balance and fairness and negotiation rather than inequality. So men don't have anything to be afraid of. And also, too, along the lines of women, I don't want to be naive and suggest to your listeners that all women embrace these ideas, because they don't. The Dalai Lama said it would be Western women who would save the world, and with all due respect, because he's a great man, I would have to say that the statement is, I think, a little bit off, because there are a lot of women who aren't Western women who are trying to save the world, indigenous people and such, people in the East. But also, too, there's a lot of women's and humanity to women out there. Phyllis Chesler, a wonderful feminist scholar, wrote a book by that name, because some women do support the status quo. They are happy with things the way they are. They benefit from it. They're not interested in changing anything at all, because life is good for them. While there are wonderful men who are feminists, who care about the very same things we care about, who are out there fighting for equality and justice and peace and balance and partnership. So I don't really think it's the gender. However, I'll put a qualifier in there. I do think that women innately do tend to think more about the big picture. How are their decisions affecting others? Even our eyes are different from the male gender's eyes. Men see in a more linear fashion. Women actually, see more around the periphery. And it's interesting, I think, because that's reflected in how we are in the world. Women are always saying, well, how is this decision going to affect my family, my loved ones, my community? Where men might just sort of trudge right ahead, because they're thinking about, okay, this is the goal. So anyway, just a little bit of clarification there, because I think those distinctions are very important. But the Parliament was incredible. The Parliament has been happening since the late 1800s, and it happens every 5 or 10 years. And lately, it's been happening, I think, like every 5 to 7 years. The last one, I think, was in Barcelona, Spain. And this year, they decided to have it in the United States, and Salt Lake City was chosen as the destination. We all met at what's called the Salt Palace, which was an incredible convention center, and I have to say Salt Lake City was actually very impressive. But it's a gathering of over 50 different religions. It's an interfaith gathering. And the theme this year was about how do we bring peace? How do we get, how do we bring sustainability, because of climate change? How do we bring equality to women? How do we rid the world of the very ills that I was just describing? Sacred feminine liberation theology actually that mythology and teachings actually promotes values that would help those ills. And it was incredible, because I guess if I could sum up the Parliament in 4 words, I've been trying to decompress and just sort of swallow it all, but it was amazing. It was overwhelming, it was exhausting, but probably most of all it was inspiring, because I went there, I'll admit, I went there a little bit down, because there's so much ugliness and hate in the news. You turn on the mainstream media, and all we hear are about our presidential candidates who are pandering to their base, and their base is about exclusion and hate, and what's in it for them, and the hell with everybody else. And in the media, pundits all go along with it and sort of just perpetuate that survival of the fittest mentality. And and because I think the mainstream media is owned by corporate America, they're happy with that sort of agenda because, corporate America, they're part of the problem today. They're the exploiters. Whether it be exploiting the environment or putting disinformation out there to guide the public in the wrong direction, or they're taking advantage of people through economic means or exploiting the environment. So, they don't talk these types of values because it goes against their bottom line. Again, it's all about the money. So it was heartening to be in a place where so many different religions were peacefully coexisting, in fact, actively embracing one another, because the universal truths are basically very much the same. We're all people. We all really want the same things. And here you could see how it is possible to have plurality and diversity and caring and sharing and tolerance. And it was just so inspiring to see what kind of world is really possible, that there's so many out there who care about these values. We just have to sort of turn off the mainstream media so that we're not poisoned with that negativity. And I think one of the most impressive speakers at one of the main gatherings said, if you're comfortable, then there's something wrong. Because how could you be a good person? How could you be have good morals if you know about all the ugliness out there in the world, all the injustice, and are just comfortable about it? How can you go to bed comfortable with so much happening in the world in so many places, from the environmental destruction to female genital mutilation to kids going to bed hungry, all the different things out there that plague humanity and detract from our quality of life. And he also said, where are your wounds? And I thought that was an interesting question, but what he meant was, when we leave this earthly plane and we are there in front of our Maker, whether we think that's God, Goddess, whoever, the great source, and he, she says to you, where are your wounds? He means, what did you fight for in life? And if you have no wounds, the great Maker, then says to you, well, was there nothing in life that you put yourself out there for? Was there nothing in life worth fighting for? And I thought that was, that spoke to me. That was very powerful, because the Parliament, while it was about religion and spirituality, it was very much a call to action. It was very much a call to social justice activism, to go out there and be leaders and perpetuate an agenda that would make a better quality of life for most of us here on the planet. They came out and said, don't support people who are about hate or about, exclusion or exploitation. And, I hope I'm not offending anyone, but here in the United States, that says don't vote for Republicans. So that was, sort of the Parliament, overall. If you want me to talk a bit about, my two presentations, I'm happy to, but, I feel like I'm rambling here, so
Oh, no, you're doing fine. And let me tell you, his statement, Karen, that was extremely profound. Where are your wounds? I mean, wow. And that should cause people to sit back on their heel, thinking in their own space, really, what have I fought for? What have I reached out there and fought for? And was it of value if I did?
Mm-hmm.
And wow, what an inspiring thought. It really is.
Yeah, I think so because, a lot of us, we are comfortable. We go to work every day. Maybe life is good or maybe okay. We don't experience hunger. Maybe we haven't experienced job loss or the loss of our home. Our family can pay for medical care. So, we're holding on. We haven't been relegated to the worst depths that so many people have experienced. I mean, we have to remember that some people don't even have clean water. But here in the United States, we don't hear about those sorts of things really. It's all about distractions. It's about our gadgets. It's about our entertainment. It's about what are the Kardashians doing. It's not about how are we making the world a better place or how are we becoming better human beings. The status quo doesn't want us to focus on that. And I apologize for the noise outside my window, but yeah, it's we have to start thinking differently, I think, because the power is in the hands of the rich and the powerful, and if we want to make the world a better place, it's going to take an evolution. It's going to take all of us together, standing shoulder to shoulder in solidarity. Otherwise, we're just going to be these lumps on our sofas, talking to each other on Facebook and playing with our gadgets while the world goes to hell.
Yeah, I can't disagree with anything that you're saying. I've become again, it's a process of evolution. You don't know what you don't know until you learn it, right? Until you are recognizing it. So, it's about being conscious of your environment. It's about being conscious of your waste, your materialism. This country used to be a country that made things. Now we're a country of consumerism. We just buy things. We buy them from every other country. We don't make what we used to. However, I will tell you, in the last 10 years, there's been a trend, a small one, but I think every little bit helps. A small trend to see some very reputable, conscious businesses start up where, first of all, the workers are being paid fairly, that they're using organic materials, that they're reusing, they're designing things that are not wasteful. They are designing things, and if there is waste, that waste can be used in some kind of productive manner. So they're small operations. They're not these big corporations, and I'm going to say the word yet, because I'm hoping, and I pray, and I look forward to the day that these small companies can become better known, and that the mainstream media gets a wake-up call for all those people taking their big pays or small pays, whatever it is, that they realize that they're just being fed information that's not true journalism. True journalism is a whole different ballgame than what we are being shown on our nightly news. And, shame on people if they're going to believe all that stuff that they see on TV, seriously. So,
True. Well,
yeah, and
Rianne Eisler, a mentor of mine who really got me started on this, she wrote The Chalice and the Blade, which made me realize all of this idea of the sacred feminine wasn't a feminist fantasy. She now has gone on to write books about partnership and caring economies, and one of her very important books now is called The Real Wealth of Nations. And to piggyback on what you said, Rebecca, one of the chapters she has in the anthology that came out that I've written last year, Voices of the Sacred Feminine, and I've interviewed Rianne on my radio show about this as well. It's about caring economics, and she goes on to say about how many companies, not the big ones like you just said, but maybe the smaller or the medium-sized ones, are starting to realize that if they use caring economics, that it helps their bottom line. They don't have to be these oppressive exploiters and in order to make a profit. So, I think it's going to take us. We're more powerful than we think, and there certainly are a lot of us. If it becomes taboo to continue to do business the way corporations do business. I mean, like, for instance, Big Pharma, a few weeks ago, somebody bought some drug that was $7 a pill, I think, and now it's $1,500 a pill or something outrageous like that. Maybe it's $5,000 a pill now. I can't remember, but it was just outrageous. When things like that start to become taboo and people boycott these companies, because, you know, you can't count on people or corporations to do things because it's the right thing to do. I think it has to hit them in the bottom, you know, on their bottom line. Although, you know, some companies do care about their public image, but, you know, when we begin to boycott them because, you know, they're known to be exploiters or abusers, whether it be of the environment or their price gouging or how they treat their employees, like, you know, how terrible Walmart treats their employees, and, you know, companies like that, you know, or the Koch brothers. You know, some people are becoming famous for their terrible deeds. Then, you know, I think that's how we shift things, because when they don't get our business anymore, then some PR firm is going to say, well, you know, maybe you got to start doing things differently, and then we'll, you know, let the public know you've changed your tactics, and, you know, we can maybe change your image then. So don't think we're helpless about this. You know, we just have to make a conscious decision to boycott these companies. You know, and there are apps out there now. You know, you can get an app on your phone that when you're in the grocery, you can pull up a product and you can see who the company is that makes it, you know, to whose campaigns they contribute money, you know, things like that. So when you're going down the toilet paper aisle, you don't buy the toilet paper that the Koch brothers make, or you don't go buy food at Chick-fil-A, you know, things like that. So, you know, we just have to become more aware of who the corporations are that are working against our interest, and, you know, use our power, you know, the power of the masses to hurt their bottom line.
You know, and I've been seeing a trend. As a matter of fact, today I just was reading an article. McDonald's is losing business, right? Well, I think it should have lost business a long time ago. But that being said, they're losing business, so they're trying to obviously remake themselves. One of the things that they're remaking themselves is that they're using beef. Only supposedly from America, with no antibiotics. They've now introduced breakfast all day or hamburgers all day, whatever it is. So today the article is that now they're only going to be using eggs from cage-free chickens. So they're trying to clean up their act. You know, who knows if it's just a promotional gimmick, you know, to make, again, just like you said, they're trying to remake their image. But this is the kind of stuff that many people have been talking about. I know I certainly have, about, you know, if they would just start, there's nothing wrong with a fast food restaurant, a drive-through, but why can't they do it with organic foods?
Right.
Non-pesticides, non-GMO'd.
Yeah.
And so we're beginning to see the rest of the world like closing down, people like Monsanto going, we don't accept you anymore.
Yeah.
So I think the world is getting the message, and I think some of them are coming faster than others, and I'm very appreciative of that. But I think you're absolutely right. There's more of us than there are those at the top of that pyramid.
That's
and
right.
I think other people really need to really hold on to that, not as a, you know, especially as females, not as because we want to overtake anything, but to stand in our solidarity and our sovereignty and just being a human being, for heaven's sakes.
Well, you know, if we want a new normal, we can't expect that to happen without some effort. Because, like I said, you know, it's unfortunate, but I don't think corporations or generally some people do the right thing just because it's the right thing to do. I mean, some of us are guided by morality, but others of us are not, you know, because think about it. It used to be greed was one of the 7 deadly sins. Well, you know, the Ayn Rand mentality that's out there, it's sort of survival of the fittest. Do what you will as long as you don't get caught. I mean, look at the big banks. You know, they destroyed the economy. Has anybody gone to jail for that? Look at the CEOs. They used to make 50 times more than a worker. Now they make 300, 400, sometimes 500 times more than their workers. I mean, it's just gotten crazy because you know what, when is enough enough? And, you know, how will they ever even spend all of that money? I think there were some statistics that showed, you know, that, you know, some of these corporations, you know, if they raise prices, I think it was a nickel or a dime, they could pay their employees a living wage, but they won't. You know, all of that, you know, doing that just has to become taboo. I mean, there was a restaurant owner that came on CBS Morning News last week who said that he's not going to make his restaurant staff depend on tips anymore. That he is going to raise the price of his entrees 20%, and then that way the wait staff, as well as the cooks behind the scenes that never get any tips, they can all benefit from that increase in the entrees price. And I don't know, I think maybe that makes sense. And, you know, maybe it's not ideal. I mean, I don't know what his overhead is, and, you know, maybe he doesn't even have to raise it 20%. But at least he's starting to think about his employees, making sure they you know, make a better wage, and the people in the kitchen who, you know, were making probably, you know, pennies compared to maybe the wait staff. So I think all around these new ideas are starting to take hold. And I mean, look at the incredible interest in Bernie Sanders. I mean, in social media or in places he appears, he is getting thousands and thousands of people to appear at his rallies, to support him. And you know, the mainstream media wants to still make him out like he's some sort of a, you know, weirdo communist freak or something, but his message is resonating with the people, although it might not resonate with corporate America, because it means that, you know, they're the ones that are gonna you know, have to actually pay their taxes and, you know, pay their employees a living wage, and maybe their CEOs don't make $500 times more than their workers anymore. You know, maybe their employees will actually get some decent benefits.